guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. Be a part of the show by calling 915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. All of those ways are to say that we are out there, and, well, the most accessible ways that we can get at this moment here are still going to be on air for as long as that tower keeps standing over there, but there's a lot of other ways that you can tune in, chime in, participate in the show throughout both hours of the program here. We've got comments that can come in over on the social media. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso is probably the main one, considering that's where the Thunderdome of comments starts after the Skeptic Squad shows up. Well, you call it what you want, but definitely appreciate the interaction that comes out of it for the most part. Always interesting is the way I put it here, and a lot to get to here today. So, start of a new week and already started new issues coming in. Governor Greg Abbott in town here today, speaking in downtown to, well, an association of law enforcement officials here in town, specifically the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition, and speaking about, well, a bunch of different aspects that might just, ever so slightly be involved with, well, the law enforcement issues he's been dealing with. I mean, we got a few issues wrapped up in that if you consider it here. Operation Lone Star, absolutely a part of it. Ongoing Texas efforts along those lines, even before the National Guard involved, including DPS. So, and of course, cooperation required with, some of the sheriffs here, but also, state and local law enforcement involved in this. Want to say at least mention of some efforts from those across other states here, but of course, in sharp focus in this event. And in the rhetoric here, we got a couple clips that we'll play from Governor Greg Abbott here today during his speech there, courtesy of our news partners over at KFOX 14, that a lot of focus on the impending end of Title 42. And of course, that has been not exactly out of the news here locally at any point in the last few weeks, ever since that first started being hinted at a possibility of a decision of the CDC, and then even beyond that now becoming officially going to be sunsetted as of, well, supposedly May, though I just got to say, even though I fully expect that continued efforts will be made along those lines, given the policies and procedures of this administration, we got to wonder if some of these other efforts are, well, going to maybe confound that. There's at least one bill that has been proposed in the national legislature that could, well, put a kibosh on that for now, not exactly an ending it, because we end up in those kind of weird legal challenges when it comes to the revocation of an executive order that was never a law in the first place. And so more focus is also happening on that of maybe the lawmakers should do their jobs and make the law. But a little bit separate there for when we're talking about Abbott. So we got a couple clips from him that we will be getting to, plus more of the federal response here. And also more just general border issues. El Paso on front pages, actually, a little bit lately when it comes to, well, those border and trade issues. Texas Tribune, amongst others, really featuring El Paso. It really caught my eye with the Franklin Mountains in the background with most of the pictures coming out on another aspect of the state-level border enforcement. Not as much being discussed during Abbott's recent view. as John Braslin let us know, is that our audio seems a little bit high. Appreciate the note there. Looks good on our end, but sometimes the social media doesn't deal with it well. In any case, let me know if that's better. But so, yeah, El Paso, again, coming up as the example, although not quite as bad as some other places. So in light of the whole Title 42 thing, another part of the response from the state level that has been, well, being discussed by Governor Greg Abbott and actually put into place was that of that enhanced screening that we discussed very briefly at the end of last week. Brazelton letting us know that we're better there. Appreciate it. And so that is causing backups mostly on the Mexican side of things, backups and crossing into with these enhanced security screenings being done, among other things, by DPS that led us to, we discussed it a little bit in terms of the, well, public-private partnerships for CBP, but that kind of outside the scope of this, since this is a kind of immediate efforts, and, well, we'll see it. It is definitely a ratcheting up of the tensions issue, and even some protests happening in other sectors of the border here, not necessarily looking like ours in this region, but, well, protests and other things going on. So we'll get into all of that, and also just kind of simmering in the background, though might be very top of mind, depending on how affected and incensed you may feel about it. But with more of that, well, the appraisals have started coming out. I've started seeing friends of mine post about it, about how unhappy they feel about the progression of their home values, which, again, you might usually think like, oh, the house is worth more. That's a good thing. But in this market and this times, well, issues do arise. So we'll get into all of that and a whole lot more. So let's get straight into it here with what is going on with Governor Greg Abbott, what he was talking about as he was at this news, giving his remarks during, rather, I should say, the, again, Texas, get the name here right, during the meeting of the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition, speaking about, well, some of these efforts and the issues being encountered by, there's a little bit loud here, but again, here was Governor Greg Abbott speaking in downtown El Paso a little bit earlier today.
The fact of the matter is that we should not be reshuffling the deck of the people who are being brought here, especially knowing what we do know about the extraordinary volume of people who will be coming across the border, which is multiples of what are coming across the border right now. And so to be prepared for that, we wanted to make sure that we would have available to all local officials the ability to transport people away from your communities where you are incapable of responding to the high demand for resources and support, as well as to assist you with regard to public safety in your communities.
Abbott speaking a little bit further about a plan that they are rolling out. It may sound similar to the previous one he had talked about this busing to DC issue, but what he was actually stating here in this case is that if there are any, particularly the smaller communities, having any, well, significant issues in just dealing with the flow of people coming across the border or being released from CBP and ICE custody, etc., that they will have buses either stationed there or available within the hour, is what he was saying, to be able to transport them to other areas with the processing ability. He had been speaking a little bit earlier during his speech about the idea of, well, people were doing that kind of in a piecemeal way, but not necessarily taking them other places, local officials I'm referring to here, and taking them to other larger areas such as San Antonio. He specifically mentioned, but that this was not a systematic, formulated, or useful approach here. Does seem vaguely reminiscent, actually. It reminds to me of what happened within this community, more specifically, well, a couple of years ago. It was right before the Christmas season, during one of the earlier years of the Trump administration, when CBP, that had previously been working with the local microcosm of nonprofits that essentially aided on the back end of processing out of the community of people who were arrested at the border, whatever their status may be, illegal entry, asylum seekers, etc., that there was then just starting to be dropped off here. So it reminds me vaguely of that, though, of course, there wasn't nearly as much response from the state level at that point here. But we'll get even further into it here because already coming up on the need for that first break of the hour, we'll hear more from Governor Greg Abbott about how they are, well, insisting on needing the support of local law enforcement, among other things, local and regional, countywide, I should say, when it comes to dealing with this issue, and more plans in response to Title 42, plus more of the impact we are seeing in this area when we're talking about trade, transit, travel, all of that. good fun and very necessary stuff. So again, already due for that first break of the hour here. So we'll take more comments over on the social media if you want to. John Browson also chiming in about appraisals and such. So that's another thing that we'll definitely touch on here. So stay tuned for more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Again, comments over on the social, taking calls a little bit later in the hour as we usually do, but a whole lot more discussion about the things that affect us here after this break. Stay tuned. Even if you're wondering about, okay, all this stuff that we're talking about, the supply, the travel, cost of energy, how is this going to affect my plans for, like, I don't know, traveling anywhere in the times ahead? And, all the good food I may have been planning to eat here, the good news is, even if that is all very uncertain and up in the air, there is still a great local source to get some of those international flavors. I know I myself had been looking at the possibility of some European travel. I may be putting that on hold given the, other instabilities that's happening. But again, Enhanced Flavors is your local source of over 40 quality flavored olive oils and balsamic vinegars and extra virgin olive oils. Of course, they're olive oils imported from Tunisia, Italy, Greece, and Spain, and all of the balsamic vinegars imported straight from the Modena province of Italy, as is required for it to be considered balsamic vinegar. They've got some great varieties and stuff that you really want to try, both light and dark balsamic vinegars, flavored and extra virgin olive oils that can really spice up your life if you're using them. I mean, including some ones that you really smell it as soon as you pop that bottle and get the garlic flavor coming out of it, and can just really add that next layer of flavor to your food here. And so the great news is you can find them out in the community, because we got those farmers markets and events going up. Specifically, they go out to the Upper Valley Farmers Market on Sundays, which happen in the Hobby Lobby parking lot near Donovan and Mesa at the Crossroads area down there. But even if you can't go and find the samples there, which is another great way to figure out what you like and what will work from you from their massive selection, but you can also find them online at enhancedflavors.com, where they'll also have the schedule and everything that's going on and how you can get it right to your door. Again, enhancedflavors.com. That's enhanced with a D, flavors.com.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Gateway Boulevard, westbound at Hawkins, an accident reported there, slowing traffic. Border Highway, eastbound at Fonseca, look for a stalled vehicle blocking the right shoulder. Injury accident with medical responding at Country Club and Montoya Drive. And watch for an injury accident in Edgemere at RC Poe. Use Rich Beam or Tierra Este as alternates. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Emmerich Juttner, for most of his life, was an upstanding citizen. Until the age of 62, he started counterfeiting $1 bills and evaded the Secret Service for a decade. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
As the country bounces back from COVID and mask mandates are lifted, your business needs a lift too. Promote your company right here, right now. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV. In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? Visit iHeartAdvertising.com and get AM and FM working for you. That's iHeartAdvertising.com.
iHeartRadio Earth is here with little tips for a healthier planet. This spring, you can share your own observations about nature with scientists and play a critical role in scientific discovery by adding to their data collection. Discover more about citizen science programs such as monitoring weather, observing plants and animals, and more. Brought to you by iHeartRadio Earth and the National Environmental Education Foundation. To find more tips for smarter, sustainable living, or to take action in your own community, go to iHeartRadio.com/Earth.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Rob, age 22.
I got COVID in September of 2020, and a few weeks later, I started to have long-term problems. I used to run 5 to 6 miles a day. Now, when I walk up a flight of stairs, I'm gasping for air. It feels like my brain is clouded and I can't think straight.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Economists are warning that sanctions against Russia could trigger devastating inflation, worse than the current 40-year highs. Hi, this is Stephen K. Bannon, and I urge you to protect your savings right now with a gold IRA through Birch Gold, the only company I trust for gold. Just text the word SECURE to 989898 to get a free info kit on how to protect your savings with gold. So text the word SECURE to 989898.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and whatever, just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today. A little bit more even locally than usual. I mean, the state level stuff that we discuss more often than not, of course, has a lot of impacts here in the borderland, though it doesn't usually come, well, the announcements and discussion of them by the statewide officials straight from the borderland region. But, of course, we had Texas Governor Greg Abbott in the House, so to speak, earlier this week, speaking during that, again, the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition spring meeting being held there, also hosted by the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. And among other things that Governor Abbott was talking about, Texans demand and deserve, this is a quote from him, an aggressive, comprehensive strategy to secure the border, not President Biden's lackluster leadership, as the federal government continues to roll back common sense policies that once kept our communities safe. Our local law enforcement has stepped up to protect Texans from dangerous criminals, deadly drugs, and illegal contraband flooding into the Lone Star State. Texans will always be a law and order state, and I thank our law enforcement officers who have answered the call to protect and serve their fellow Texans in the federal government's absence in securing our border. Again, that absence in, well, dealing with the border issues. I mean, again, I find it's a little bit problematic at best whenever we talk about open borders and the idea that we have them, because I feel that that completely ignores and invalidates the efforts of the very federal and very present agents we have in our area, both ICE, CBP, and Border Patrol in general, acting like, well, they're just not doing anything. They need more support. Absolutely. And they're working their tails off, is my understanding. And I've talked with them or the representatives and such here. So that's why I take and bristle at the use of that phrase that is commonly used, because I'm sure that those in that line of work here and doing that work in our region probably don't appreciate it much either. If I'm wrong, or if I have any misconceptions about that, please let me know, because I got to imagine if you're doing that work and dealing with and facing down, well, these major things we're looking at the rollback of Title 42, that would be a little bit demoralizing at best to know that people don't think you're doing anything in the meantime. But again, want there more to be done. Don't take this as so let's stop talking about it and say that everything's fine here, because that's also not gonna work at all. So more of the topics that Governor Greg Abbott was talking about during his visit here to El Paso, a number of priorities, a list of things that he said that he has done, an item of about just under a dozen different items to talk about here. And this coalition made up of 33 sheriff's offices who are along the southern border as part of, again, the whole discussion about what is going on with law enforcement. Again, one more clip I want to play from you from the speech that Governor Greg Abbott gave about, well, again, the consideration and partnership with local law enforcement being very important, even as Operation Lone Star continues to have 10,000 or so National Guard troops that have been active and, I guess, technically deployed would be the correct phrase, even if they're still within the state of Texas, being used for it. And, well, he also talked a lot more about some of the specific efforts being looked at in regions here. So more about his consideration of local law enforcement. Here again, this is Governor Greg Abbott speaking a little bit earlier today from here in El Paso.
This is really something unique in this day and age. This is a true bipartisan coalition, something that's rarely seen. It's like a chupacabra, it seems like these days. We are grateful for the 6 Democrat sheriffs who testified in favor of Operation Lone Star. We set aside partisan differences for the safety of our communities and the safety of our state.
Again, that Governor Greg Abbott speaking from El Paso a little bit earlier today during the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition spring meeting here. And if you look at something he said a little bit later on that just kind of made me chuckle in its own inadvertent way. So he was speaking there and addressed towards the latter part of his speech about all the white hats in the room and Sheriff Wiles. Because if you look at particularly the pictures from our news partners over at KFOX 14 from the conference room they are giving it in, many of the sheriffs that were present there in the area of the 33, again, represented by this whole conference, many of them out there wearing that pretty iconic white cowboy hat, styled in kind of that, well, I guess slightly more rural sheriff's idea. And then at the end of the slide there, you can see it there that we had, of course, Sheriff Wiles in slightly more of a police officer-ish uniform than, well, some of these other gentlemen out there being their own smaller sheriff's departments here. So I think it could have been taken as a dig, but I think was mostly meant to represent the reality of, well, the size of the departments, among other things. I mean, some of the laws that have come out of Texas legislative sessions in the past have specifically singled out El Paso when it comes to enforcement and size and ability, because of course you cannot say in general Texas law that this law only applies to this one county, but well, it's along the border pretty easy to say that this only applies to counties with 500,000 people or more because, well, that's basically just El Paso County. So there's some size and differences that are being respected and understood here. But again, the major discussion coming out of this from the governor's office about, okay, what are we doing? What are the priorities? I mean, some of the other things that he discussed was, again, those ongoing operations with Operation Lone Star, about the deployment of concertina wire, mentioned slightly bit about some enforcement actions in this area, but more generically, most of that program, policies, and all the things coming with it very much along, well, the eastern portions from our region anyway, of the actual Rio Grande, talking about both border boat blockades was a phrase that he used in speaking with it, and about the deployment of the concertina or razor wires. I think he more specifically referred to it as during his speech here. So very much a focus on it, and very much something that is probably going to continue to evolve here. And again, focus on the local level support of it. Again, saying that those, in a different way, buses going to be available for any locality that needs it to essentially transport out an influx of people, again, whether the illegal crossers, asylum seekers, etc., that are overwhelming local resources. But I do think it's an interesting thing to point out that as a result of what was being talked about during this meeting here, again, from the Texas Border, let me say it correctly here in notes, flub it here, the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition, that some others speaking during it were not as concerned about it. Richard Wiles said specifically the issue is here in El Paso. We don't anticipate a significant increase in the numbers. Mainly the migration has been to other counties east and south of here. So we have certainly been working in communication with Border Patrol and DPS in anticipation of what could possibly occur here. But then well, again, some of the other sheriffs that were not necessarily a part of the whole Texas Border Coalition, but rather those visiting here, Mark Daniels, sheriff of Cochise County in Arizona, said, in my county, we have gotaways, 16,000 gotaways a month. So with that, plus another 22,000 encounters, you can imagine the impact we're concerned about with Title 42. So that more than, well, a little bit of it. And then Hidalgo County Sheriff Eddie Guerra, also as noted by our news partners over at KFOX 14. We've got additional troopers. We've got an individual with the Texas Military National Guard, and they're moving in more air assets. And I know they've already done some drills in Hidalgo County. So again, that expectation of the removal of Title 42 on May 23rd, very much at top of mind. But this, of course, is not the only way that is being talked about when it comes to, well, this enforcement and current efforts here. One that has not been as, well, nationally getting responded to, but is certainly causing issues, among other things, in our area, is, again, the border crossings and more vehicle inspections and causing, well, local issues already being seen in our area. Again, a picture on some of the reporting being done by the Texas Tribune, among others, featuring predominantly El Paso, very recognizable Franklin Mountains in the background, of the backlog of trucks they say are stacking up on the, well, among other places, the picture they got here as the Isleta Zaragoza International Bridge in Ciudad Juarez, coming to cross into the United States, and that these enhanced, among other things, inspections being required of it is then causing issues. And so I did notice, I had talked a bit in the past about how, even as in the chip aisle, a lot of empty shelves still, the Takis seem to be holding out. Well, my hopes were dashed this past weekend. Went to find some, and that was the part that was gone there. So, locally speaking, anyway, we might see a spike in some bare shelves coming up here, and hopefully won't get too bad. I doubt there'll be no food, but again, the specific stuff that you're going to want at any given point still seeming to be, well, yeah, your luck is hopefully going to be on your side, and may the odds be ever in your favor. But, well, that's not a guarantee, as we have long been used to, outside of again, just don't do it with the damn toilet paper is all I'm asking. I thought we got over that in 2020. but I'm not going to hold my breath there either. That's going to take us into our next break here. Coming out of this break, we'll talk more about that, what the situation is affecting us here in the borderland, and then more about, well, some of those appraisal letters that y'all might have been starting to get here, and, what that means, among other things. Some response I'm already seeing of being unhappy would be an understatement, but we'll get into it here and more. Comments coming in over on the social media as well, including Maria Coleman, John Brauslet, more tuning in and chiming in. If you want to leave your comments over there, that's one of the better places to do so throughout the program here, as you can also see the wonderful show that we put on over on social media. You got full video and everything. So we got to take that next break right now, but coming out of the break again, more discussion about these and more situations. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update. El Paso police are investigating a shooting death. Around 8 p.m. last night, police told CBS 4 the victim took themselves to the Sierra Providence East campus on Edgemere and Joe Battle with gunshot wounds. Now, police say the victim died from their injuries at the hospital. Investigators are now working to determine where the shooting happened and who was involved. Meanwhile, El Paso police are also investigating a stabbing that sent one man to the hospital with serious injuries. It was reported around 10:30 Sunday morning on Dyer close to Amin Drive. Police say one person was taken to UMC Hospital with life-threatening injuries. Investigators did arrest one person in their search for the suspect. As always, you can stay up to date with the latest news all by signing up for our CBS 4 newsletter. Just go to cbs4local.com, enter your email address, and from there you'll start receiving our daily news updates straight to your inbox.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
It's up for a crash reported Gateway Boulevard West at Hawkins. A stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder, Border Highway eastbound at Fonseca. An injury accident slowing traffic, Artcraft westbound at South Desert Boulevard. And I-10's got some early stop-and-go traffic eastbound between Piedras and Copia Street. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If April is showering your company with open job positions, check out Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Sponsor your first job today and get hiring by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months and deals are even bigger and better with 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso, El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate at dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 on News Radio 690 KTSM, breaking down the impact of the news on the borderland and beyond. Brought to you in part by Mission Del Rey Southwest, Souvenirs, Gifts, and Decor. That's Talk El Paso, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., right here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Emmerich Juttner, for most of his life, was an upstanding citizen. Until the age of 62, he started counterfeiting $1 bills and evaded the Secret Service for a decade. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways that on those pages, particularly, you can leave your comments here as we have John Browsett and Maria Coleman and more tuning in, chiming in. Appreciate you doing so. Maria Coleman on the border security issue saying there are reports of discord in the Biden administration. There was no plan in place after lifting Trump policies. CBP was demoralized after Biden chastened officers who chastised regarding the Haitian fiasco. They convey appreciation of their efforts here, and going on to say most municipalities reassess every 3 years, not yearly. When it comes to the property valuations here, why is this unfair practice in place? A novel approach would be to stop granting tax breaks to profit entities, but giving homeowners a tax break. We are making up the difference. That is the other side of the conversation when it comes to bringing businesses into town and it's pretty obvious to see the major structuring. Even with that most recent project, I want to say we've talked about is probably the whole Crest building, refurnishing, rebuilding, rehabilitation in downtown El Paso. Again, if the building we're talking about there at the corner of Oregon, well, right off the corner, if you're looking south from San Jacinto Plaza, it's on the right corner, now across from the whole Plaza Hotel complex here. But that one and most of the previous ones I can think about, including, just previous on our air discussions here, what was coming in for Schneider Electric, all of these kind of predicated on the idea of essentially tax incentives, tax breaks, tax halts, depending on which level of government you're talking about, for a period of years in order to incentivize it. The idea there being that, let's keep it going, let's bring you in, and eventually, as long as you don't then close up shop promptly after the incentives end, you'll then stick around and we'll have built up the tax base. That's the concept anyway. But then, as Maria is referring to there, more than a little bit of concern that can come out of then, considering that we are, some of the discussions I've had recently with other folks and concerned parties about this, about how underwater El Paso, city of El Paso specifically seems. I think someone brought that up on our air. If I didn't have that conversation in person here with someone else about, assets versus liabilities, that being a part of an issue, but also just the tax burden being primarily on homeowners, which is, to my understanding, having not done an exhaustive county by county look in Texas and how that works, but to my understanding, unusual, or at the very least out of the norm for when it comes to how these things are structured and usually thought about. That usually it's the businesses that end, the brunt on it and try to take it down on homeowners. But it's all about the tax burden and the amount of money coming in. That there are some notable exceptions and outliers within that current situation. I do recall when it was what is now Marathon Refining, their whole facility here in town, that a slight change in their contestation of their valuation ended up trickling down so far that it had to see some layoffs and serious changing of all of the taxing entities' budgets under that, including the city, the county to an extent, and even the school district for that particular area. So it's still can be significant, but that is easily one of the most expensive properties in a large property itself. Here we're talking about all that thing that's on either side of Trowbridge. If you had a kind of southeast vaguely when you get off of I-10 in that area, either side of the road there is for mile or so dominated by industrial areas that are predominantly the Marathon Refining, Western Refining at the time when that case happened, I do recall here. So there's a reasonable thing to talk about here. I know some of the people I know pointing out that they are very, very unhappy about the way these appraisals are coming out. At least one person I know saying that looking at some of their houses that they're involved with having gone up since the last 5 years. So they're like 20 to 50% in valuations with no major work happening on the house. At least one person I saw mentioning that they've seen their valuation in 1 year go up 6 figures. Now, again, you might think, it's worth more, therefore I've got more net worth. And sure, if you're thinking about it that way, that is technically correct. But as, John Browsett put it a little bit earlier, the house and business appraisals going to surprise a lot of El Paso citizens, not in a good way. Because if you're looking at this from as most residents end up doing so, a tax liability standpoint, yeah, it's going to go up. And even if we did see the either holding of the line or the revenue neutral budget coming out of respectively the city of El Paso and the county of El Paso during the last budget season, which meant that there was no change in your tax rate when it came to the city side of things, and literally no increase in the amount of taxes you would pay property tax wise to the county of El Paso. Well, if it's going up again, that is effectively a tax hike for you, though not usually in the way we talk about being mad at a specific elected official on either of those bodies as we usually talk about. So, I mean, it's going to cause issues for a lot of people. Fixed incomes primarily come to mind when we're talking about this, because if suddenly the amount of money you're paying for a property is going up and that is not accounted for in some way, you're going to have issues, which, just as a side note to that, probably going to place even more importance on that upcoming uniform May election date. So this is coming up in early May here. I'll find that exact date here in just a minute. But that has two items on it relating to taxation and the way it is formulated, particularly for the homestead tax exemption here in Texas. One of the aspects will involve two primary points, I believe, coming up on that. One going into how essentially school property taxes are assessed, trying to take that down a bit, and essentially more coming out from the state, but not from directly property taxes, more from other raised revenues. I think more than a little bit the oil field, but slightly separate conversation there. But the other part of it definitely has to do with increasing the amount that can be dealt with in terms of the homestead tax exemption. With those of you of a certain age may be becoming very familiar with it, that essentially allows you to remove certain amounts of the property value of your home from the ability of it to be taxed. Kind of think of it like the deductions that you have on your regular income taxes, federal income taxes, but for your house specifically. If I'm wrong there, let me know, because I haven't had to deal with that as much here. But John Browson is saying further, El Paso school districts are out of control. Each district has almost as many administrators and office staff as teachers. Top heaviness has certainly been an issue, and well, education has been its own sharp focus in the state, of course, and across state lines, even Texas, for instance, New Mexico, that interesting situation we get to straddle and see both sides of, because, of course, New Mexico has had its own teacher shortage issues, and Texas has been no stranger to that. They're taking on their different tangent of it. And of course, Texas is feeling a little bit behind the eight ball at this point, because we've got that task force that has been called for by Texas Governor Greg Abbott in terms of trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? What is needed? That kind of a thing. And then New Mexico, of course, as we've discussed, putting in that graduated pay grade schedule that includes certain amounts of up to $10,000 per, even if we've had some finer points made by some callers about, okay, this doesn't mean immediately you're getting more money. There's a potential for it, and I'm sure it will be a hell of a recruiting tool for them, being like, oh, look at this compensation schedule. It is so much better than what you can expect, say, across state lines in Texas. But there's still a very much demand here. I am aware of, amongst other things, here in Texas, even with Region 19 being the education service center that services all of the area school districts, essentially, I don't want to use the words desperate, but very much in need of substitute teachers, so much that they are doing, well, pretty quick turnaround trainings to get just people almost butts into seats kind of solution to this. Because, New Mexico did have to call into Las Cruces. It was two, but still technically calling in of the National Guard in order to address the teacher shortage. And, well, Texas is already using the National Guard in other ways here, so not sure if that would even be available. So, there are issues, and top heaviness when it comes to districts, more administrators than those that are actually doing the teaching is not exactly a good look. Bureaucracy expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy kind of reasoning it does feel a lot about. But in any case, if for your situation when it comes to these taxes, again, keep your eye as we get on those sample ballots as we get closer to that early May election, because they're technically going to be two. Early May uniform election for those Texas constitutional amendments we were talking about, and then the primary runoff. Why they couldn't just put them together as opposed to having two damn different elections. Well, I guess there's a bunch of reasons I'm not in charge of these things, because I would probably ask that and get told unhappily that, well, we can't do that because of reasons. And I'd say, yeah, that still makes no sense. Yeah, we'll see if I ever end up at that kind of an office. I kind of doubt it, because of, well, doing those kind of actions and being otherwise not going with the flow if it doesn't make sense. Maybe that's why I'll never run for public office, but we'll see. In any case, those are the two elections you're going to want to keep your eyes on as we get closer to May, and as we get closer to all of this, we'll probably do even more discussion about it here. There's a lot going on with this. That one other thing I wanted to mention that we got to just barely at the end of before going into last break, but wanted to get to here, more about Well, essentially, that's additional border security screenings that Governor Greg Abbott has ordered on the part of the state. Again, DPS. Previously, it has been kind of there's been increasing amounts of resources being spent primarily federally when it comes to doing inspections, wanting to make things move faster, but that really, this is affecting the commercial stuff. So there may have been somewhat of an uptick within the essentially non-commercial and the pedestrian lanes. The reports coming out of, again, Texas Tribune and other news partners that we've got about how inspections are now being conducted, that essentially every single truck is being inspected, again, as part of Governor Greg Abbott's instructions in the lead up to the removal of Title 42, as we are looking down the possibility of, again, I'm a little bit dubious if it'll go down exactly like that, but time does feel like it's running short here, that every vehicle in some locations does seem to be getting inspected as opposed to every other, some basic screenings and then doing in-depth inspection on those ones that pop, essentially, that seem like they have other issues with them, which means that every truck that seems to be crossing is taking about 45 minutes to an hour, according to some, and also leading to, protests in some areas and also further shortages. Mexican news outlets reporting that RJ keeping me grounded here, saying silly me asking government to make sense here. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that, and why, again, I might not be a good fit for public office, but I don't know if I ever even want to dip a toe into that. But anyway, there are along some of these the Mexican news outlets reporting that in some locations there are actually blockades happening to southbound traffic in protest of. That doesn't seem like it's happening in our area, Reynosa, Mexico, looking like they're having their own issues, but also just probably more supply chain struggles happening for our region. And a longer term question does come to mind for me. We've talked a lot about this whole nearshoring concept and the issues and possibilities and potentials that come along with it. Could this put a kibosh on that if this stays in place very long? It certainly seems like it's a little bit of a pain inflection technique. I mean, Governor Greg Abbott has, of course, shown himself to have a little bit of a propensity towards the theatrical, the whole announcement and then slight walk back of the idea of busing people into D.C. And the realities came out as the technical and legal questions very much immediately piled up with all of that. So whether or not this will be something that stays long-term or just until enough attention is paid to it from federal is the real question in my mind when it comes to, well, frankly, all of this, even if some efforts have certainly been a little bit more longevity to them than you might have initially thought, looking only at the theatrical side of it here. But that's going to go ahead and take us through the next break here right now. This is the one in the show when we usually open up those phone lines, and I suppose we'll do so now. A lot of subjects we are discussing here today. So if you want to call in during the show, that number to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot more we'll get to and a whole lot more comments over on the social media, calls on the line. Again, 915-544-5876. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned. I am very excited because right after the show today, I'm going to go get my hair cut. And that may sound a little mundane, like, okay, being excited, but I am very excited because this is going to be the start of a partnership that we are actually doing here as the hair and beard sponsor of the program with Gentleman's Republic Barber Salon. Now, you may be wondering, what does that mean if you've never heard about the place? I've talked about them a little bit in the past, and that's where I trust my noggin and everything that you see, again, in our wonderful broadcasts on social media. But Gentleman's Republic Barber Salon and Men's Spa is the grooming experience every man deserves, where traditional barbering arts and modern spa services meet your favorite watering hole. It's in a beautiful location. It's right down the street from us here on Mesa in an old Trost building, and you just get the sense of place as you enter it there. And again, it's where I trust everything that goes on my head and the hair on it to them. So I'll be going there a little bit immediately after the show here today. And if you want to check them out for yourself, you can find them at 1712 North Mesa. And you really want to book your appointment ahead of time and call them by phone at 915-532-3000. That's 915-532-3000 because, well, every man deserves to be treated like a king for a day.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Heads up for a crash reported Gateway Boulevard West at Hawkins. A stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder, border highway eastbound at Fonseca. An injury accident slowing traffic Artcraft westbound at South Desert Boulevard. And I-10's got some early stop and go traffic eastbound between Piedras and Copia Street. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
The new true crime podcast, White Eagle, investigates one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history. The robbery of over $7 million from an armored car warehouse. Was the ringleader a criminal mastermind, or was he a political pawn in a Cold War operation?
For some folks, they were boogeymen. They were, bandits hidden in the mountains and shadowy figures. For others, they were heroes.
Listen to White Eagle on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland. Whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development, the El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer. Regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
Act reminds you that on Monday, April 18th, taxes are due. Don't panic. There's still time for Tax Act to get you a guaranteed max return. File for less and get more at taxact.com.
Emmerich Juttner, for most of his life, was an upstanding citizen. Until at the age of 62, he started counterfeiting $1 bills and evaded the Secret Service for a decade. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of ways to interact with the show, as we also have that phone line open right now. That number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Have those lines open throughout the rest of the hour. Also, a lot of the comments coming in over on social media. I can't look at what RJ said and not laugh right now over on the YouTube page. He was saying, silly me asking government to make sense here. I know that it is very silly of me, but I'm not going to get over that, because sure, there might be explanations and real drill down deeps for why specific things may happen, but I also think that incompetence, again, the phrase that I think about a lot here is that never assume malice when incompetence is as easy of an explanation. Maybe a misappropriation of the quote here, but it very much keeps in my mind here. But on that also issue going on with some of the border issues, as we have a Tim Boyington Sr. dropping the like over there on the social media. Do appreciate it for a comment on the, essentially increased times. There are blockades happening, but I wouldn't call it necessarily that from the governor's side of things, but that on the enhanced security of the border and inspections being required by Texas Governor Greg Abbott on the part of DPS, that the inconvenience may prompt DC officials to address the border. We will definitely experience supply issues here. Inability to ship goods easily could be an incentive for Mexico by curtailing migrants from reaching the border. Money is a powerful motivator. In that vein, I am reminded of the espoused border security plan by erstwhile Texas gubernatorial candidate in previous elections, Kinky Friedman, who I used to have one of the posters around here because I was like, you got to keep a hold of that here after that campaign was over. But essentially that his plan boiled down to you establish bank accounts in the name of each major Mexican general in charge of a sector, including the border, and you put $1 million in each account, and every time someone crosses the border within their sector, you remove a set amount of money. Let's call it $1,000. If it's getting real bad, you make it $5,000 or something in that order, and you'll see how soon that problem gets locked down. A little bit more of a Muammar Gaddafi kind of idea behind it, but still, it comes to mind here. But let's get to those phone calls before we end up at the bottom of the hour here. So we do have Harry on the east side here with us right now. Harry, thanks for joining us.
Yes, hey, good afternoon, El Paso. Good to be back with you good folks. Subject with me today is guns. What I have to say about that is buckle up, hold on your hats, and put your Kevlar vests on. I am a news junkie, and I counted no less than 36 shootings this weekend, and that doesn't even count South Chicago, which I don't think they even add up anymore. And the point is that the guns are coming across the border. Of course, drugs is bad enough. Guns is probably even worse. And they're getting out to these major cities. We are becoming the Wild West. We're going to have these mass shootings, drive-by shootings, 8-10 people shot at, how many killed, simply because, thank you, border security, thank you, Joe Biden, and the allowance and the dropping the rules for the border. We're now going to be paying for it. I said this previously. We are going to be in danger. Thank you.
I mean, I'll admit that the whole lax border controls, I am sure that there are some coming back north, though the primary traffic that we've seen, I mean, previous operations come to mind, such as Fast and Furious, and no, I'm not talking about the movie, as well, relatively going south, but I'm sure that, the price is right. Something will move any direction across the border here. I know that there has been a lot of talk on the whole ghost gun phenomenon, essentially the 3D printed idea of components of a firearm coming in. And I mean, I got to say that the idea of putting more rules into place when we're not already enforcing the laws that are on the books, among other things, I mean, it's still illegal for persons of certain categories of previous felonious nature to possess these. And even as much as there's focus on the technology changing, I've seen way more things of, even here locally in previous years, people just straight up going out and robbing gun stores, breaking into them, because if there's one thing that seems to happen with criminals for the most part, it's the path of least resistance, kind of the path of water. Why flow uphill when you can just go downhill and get to the same location? So the idea of stealing what's already out there is more prevalent, or at least has been in our area anyway. But yeah, I mean, among other things that did come out to me is that in the light of some of these recent incidents, particularly in California, there was more talk of more control efforts that were, among other things, already in place in California. So yeah, I think it's going to be, like you said, a little bit of a wild ride going forward to see what actually starts coming down, particularly during this administration.
Yeah, what it boils down to, Andrew, is they're selling us wolf tickets. That's the current batch of politicians. There is no gun laws that's going to change anything for this reason. The good, honorable folks that own guns own them for different reasons. Probably most part now would be for protection. The bad guys will always be able to get the guns. And for that, you can legislate, you can sell more wolf tickets, and it's not going to work. They're still going to get their guns.
Yep, security theater implications that you have. Well, removing guns from the street, but again, the question of, okay, who are you removing them from? Are you removing them from the people that weren't the issue with them, or are you only removing them from the people that are the issue? And well, the answer usually ends up being the former. So yeah, buckle up is probably the best advice. I mean, in general, that's good advice lately, but I think particularly there, it makes sense here. So we got to hit that next break right now. Thank you for the point in the call. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And we will take more of those calls here, but right now we got to get to that top of the hour break. So we're going to hit the top of the hour news here, and coming back, we'll get to more calls, more commentary, more discussion about the things affecting us here in El Paso. So stay tuned. That number to call, again, 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. Back after this break with more. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Couple of stalled vehicles to look out for. One of them on the border highway eastbound at Fonseca. It's blocking the right shoulder. Another stall westbound on Loop 375 at Zaragoza. That stalled vehicle's off to the right. Injury accident with medical and police on the scene. Artcraft westbound at South Desert Boulevard. And police on the scene of an accident. RC Poe at Edgemere. You Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months, and deals are even bigger and better. With 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months, 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso, El Paso Strong. Excludes factory rebate at dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Stay informed at KTSMradio.com. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is being questioned about a prediction from a former Treasury Secretary that a recession might be coming.
That's not a projection we have made from here. We believe that the economy is strong. We have created more jobs last year than any year in American history. We saw the unemployment rate at 3.6%.
Larry Summers worked for the Clinton administration and said inflation and other factors may lead to a recession next year. A new survey shows growing fears about inflation. The New York Federal Reserve poll found consumers worried that inflation will rise above 6% over the next year, a significant rise. Topping the list of concerns are rent, healthcare, food, and gasoline. President Biden is taking aim at rampant gun violence in the U.S. During a White House event, Biden promoted a new federal rule designed to curb so-called ghost guns. They're manufactured privately and do not have serial numbers. Biden said anyone can get their hands on ghost gun kits. He noted that ghost guns are easy to assemble and are essentially untraceable. 2 families of transgender teens and 2 doctors are suing the state of Alabama over its new transgender healthcare law. They're hoping to block the law, which makes it a crime for doctors to treat trans youth with puberty blockers and hormones. It's set to take effect next month unless the federal court puts a stop to it. FedEx is being sued over a mass shooting almost 1 year ago at an Indiana facility.
The plaintiffs say security at the Indianapolis location wasn't good enough. 8 people died on April 15th of last year in the shooting before the gunman took his own life. The shooting was carried out by a former employee. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Portland, Oregon got more snow today than any single day in April in at least 82 years. The National Weather Service says the rare April event left several inches of heavy, wet snow. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The U.S. Border Patrol says it's seeing a rise in illegal border crossings, particularly in the San Diego area. Eddie McCoven reports.
Customs and Border Protection officials say they're seeing an average of 450 illegal crossings a day, both by land and by water. This compared to an average of 150 illegal crossings a day before the COVID-19 pandemic. The increase in numbers is due in part to the number of families making the journey to the border and the increase in unaccompanied minors. Children and families were not expelled under Title 42. I'm Eddie McCoven.
A judge in Idaho says Lori Vallow Daybell is fit to stand trial for the murders of her 2 children. Vallow was committed to a state mental health facility last year after the court determined she was unable to face charges. Investigators say Vallow and her husband Chad Daybell murdered her 2 children and buried them on their property. Fresh off a rally in North Carolina over the weekend, former President Trump will be making a speech tonight, a lot closer to home.
The former president will be addressing members of an organization named in his honor. Trump will speak at the Palm Beach Airport Hilton at an event hosted by Club 45 USA. Organizers say all the tickets were gone in less than an hour of an email going out to club members last month alerting them to the event. The 45 in the club's name is from the number of Trump's presidency, but they may need to change their name down the road. While he has not announced a run for the White House in 2024, there's been a lot of speculation that he will. I'm Joel Malkin.
An Egyptian man is the holder of 2 Guinness World Records for swimming underwater with a single breath after losing his leg. Omar Higazi lost his leg in a motorcycle accident 6 years ago. Higazi set one world record by swimming 185 feet and 4 inches underwater with a single breath. He set the other by then swimming 251 feet and just over 7 inches in a single breath using a fin. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
It's prom season, and this week the free iHeartRadio app is getting you set for an epic night with our iHeartRadio prom playlist. Whether you're getting ready for your prom or looking to relive an unforgettable night from years ago, we've got the playlist to get you dancing and maybe even look up your crush on socials.
Ew, he's married to who?
Want to create your own? Create a playlist filled with the prom songs you want. Name it, save it, even share it with friends, all for free. Get started when you download the free iHeartRadio app. Discover music, radio, and podcasts you'll love.
Why? Why take a chance? Why risk a mistake? Why say something? We all have reasons why we choose to ignore the things that give us pause, that seem out of place, that don't feel right. The word why can either paralyze us or empower us to stand up and protect what we love. So if you see something, why do you say something?
I see safe for my family.
I see safe for my friends.
I see say for my students.
We see say for each other.
I see say because all of this matters.
We all have something worth protecting, a why that unifies this community we're all a part of. So protect your everyday. Report suspicious activity to local authorities. If you see something, say something.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, so appreciate everyone tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or over on our various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over at YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch, Andrew J. Polk, and a lot of comments coming in on those social media pages as well. The Facebook page is still the primary. It's where the Skeptic Squad assembles, and the Thunderdome of comments comes in every day. And a lot of interesting ones coming in so far. Carol Rank, Barbara Carrasco, RJ Maria Comment, John Brazelton Moore tuning in, chiming in, Tim Bowington dropping the heart react over on Facebook. We do appreciate it because just the feedback I both find helpful, and it helps with the whole social media rankings and all that good algorithmic things here. Some interesting comments here. The RJ on that idea of, well, the Kinky Friedman proposal for border security. We're talking about saying might save some money. Too much to ask here. Well, we'll see what happens here. Barbara Carrasco on the appraisal saying, just received my 2022 notice of appraised value. 2022 is 35% more than 2021. Considerable tax increase. Yeah, that would do it. Not seeing much reporting out about the sum total of what we're looking at this year, but just as a reminder, last year the average appraisal increase was about 13% for 2021. So if we're continuing that trend, well, buckle up might just be the phrase of the day here. And Carol Rank, the comment that'll show up longer than I can display over on the social media, but about the immigration issues and the Texas state effort saying, so let me get this right. Texas has 10,000 National Guard on the border, but they can't arrest them. Why? Well, simply put, that it's a state level effort. They cannot be the ones, enforcing federal law, because then they'd be superseding federal authority. And border security, I mean, usually if someone's committing a felony, anyone can arrest them. But also this is, I mean, it's a it's the way it's structured. They can only really arrest them because they're not like doing smuggling or other obvious illegal things. I mean, illegal entry into the United States is a federal offense, but a pretty low-level one considering. The most thing that they can accept, I mean, not necessarily in reality, but the way it's formulated is what I'm referring to there. Specifically what the state-level efforts are and what we had that deputization essentially happening of the, well, National Guard troops that were being stationed there was for state-level offenses only, and therefore, essentially, trespassing is the most they could arrest them for, which has seen its own level of issue when it comes to the courts here, including one based out of El Paso, a state court, saying that, yeah, this case doesn't have merits and getting thrown out, and there's been a lot of legal flurry happening in the background of that. I mean, those have been very kind of individual and piecemeal efforts on the part of individual attorneys and the accused in those cases, but statewide, that's why they're, well, among other things, what Governor Greg Abbott was talking about was the idea of focusing on physical border security efforts because, as much as they're in support roles, but kind of doing their own thing. I mean, previously when there have been those quote-unquote deployments, I mean, yes, they are technically deployments, but a deployment that isn't happening abroad just doesn't fit the phrase correctly in my mind, having known plenty of service members who were deployed plenty of times. But anyway, that's more of a personal issue, I guess. But previously, when there had been these additional troops being used domestically anyway, National Guard, it was in support of the federal authorities, but, well, among other things, Texas kind of going its own way about this and doing its own thing and getting some of those, formerly federal supplies, though that, to my understanding, has kind of ended now. There were supplies over in Arizona, actually, that Texas asked for under some federal programs, allowing for use of unused federal supplies for state-level efforts, though not exactly envisioned in this kind of category, one that was written, I am sure, here. But Carol goes on to say here, why are taxpayers paying for them to be here, come here the legal way, for such a burden upon the taxpayers and the wall, but gets paid for? Why not use nonviolent offenders to help on the wall and take time off their sentence to get the wall done? Feel bad for Border Patrol. They are overwhelmed and underpaid. Great job. Among other things, I think it got cut off there. Comments apparently do have a character limit here, but we don't set that. It's just the social media platforms here. Maria Kalman also saying, why do homeowners in this region tolerate this? I don't recall a candidate addressing the issue effectively. Foreclosures may be an unintended consequence. Already to this point, there has been a little bit of reporting going on about people essentially being priced out of the area and with just rising other costs. And so this may see it. I mean, again, the fixed income category, El Paso has long been touted as a great place to retire, particularly for former service members. And I got to wonder, well, how that's going to deal with it here. But let's get to those phone lines because we do also have those open as well. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. We do have Raul in the Northeast in the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, a couple of things. El Paso and El Pasoans' well-being will forever, inexorably be tied to the well-being of Juarezans in Mexico. And UTEP and Juarez's universities, in partnership with our city's respective municipal and state governments, should be working together to solve the region's problems of poverty, pollution, water scarcity, economic opportunities or lack of them, and most importantly, bringing down the cost of living, energy, food, health insurance, the basics that everybody needs, and that in this country are controlled and owned by plutocrats. Now, the U.S. Built Juarez's waste treatment plant. I don't know if you knew that. And before that, its construction, that waste was being drained untreated into the river.
Yep.
When there was water in the river to dump it in. So now the United States the United States defeated the Nazis and rebuilt Germany and Japan and turned them into democratic countries, economic powerhouses, and our allies. The U.S. split the atom. The U.S. put man on the moon. We invented the computer and the internet. We decoded DNA and mapped the human genome. So we ought to be working on turning human waste into clean, cheap energy. There's no end to human waste. We should get it for free from the Mexicans right across the border and ours. I think if we could split the atom to make energy, we could cut the crap to make energy too. The universities and elected leaders should be working on bringing down and keeping down the cost of living. But unfortunately, waste makes capitalist money. Waste, like greed, is good for them. They've wasted our environment by poisoning our air, environment, and climate. And it goes without saying that how our taxes are spent is determined by the plutocrats, the military-industrial complex, and the best politicians money can buy. The U.S. has spent trillions on foreign wars and military equipment. But look at the state of the average American, again, where 60% can't come up with $1,000 in case of an emergency. It's pitiful. And the greedy plutocrats do not want cheap and lasting goods. So they got to keep those proletariats busy working, just getting by to pay for all the things they need to survive and would like to have. Their goal is to keep the proletariats drugged with alcohol, drugs, TV, and religion.
You bring up an interesting point there. I actually am somewhat reminded of a project that was happening regionally, not exactly in El Paso, but near that dairy area. If you ever head up I-10 towards Las Cruces, you might smaggle your nose, or might run smack into it anyway. And there was actually a project going on, the idea of, as opposed to, because there have been some wastewater and groundwater contamination issues in that area, and there was at least a proposal at one point, or a startup business, I think, trying to get off the ground, the idea of then processing and turning it into other products, fuels, other things here. Don't know if that's ever, within the near future, going to be feasible with human waste anyway, if only because of the disease implications. I mean, one of the actual interesting offshoots of pandemic response, among other things, slight non sequitur, but stay here with me, is the idea of doing more testing in wastewater treatment plants because of the way that community health can be found in a arguably non-obtrusive way, even if it's an unsavory way to think about. But seeing what literally gets flushed, ends up in one area, see what is present in it to determine what is going on in the community. So that might be slightly more feasible, but the idea of waste use, in some ways, it might be some technology that can be developed that way, but I think that would be decades away at best here. But beyond that, I think any companies that is just trying to just squeeze out as much as they can, get as much value, and not thinking about the long term, well, that's actually a problem I do recall Henry Ford running into, the idea of only paying the people as little as you can while hoping that someone then can buy it. Who's going to then end up being your customers? If you're assuming that someone else will pay their people enough money to then be able to buy your products, well, if everyone has the same mentality, that ends up becoming a tragedy of the commons era. And sure, we have an inflation issue at the moment. We have too much money chasing too few products, and that might be, some of the issues we've talked about, including the one I talked about a little bit at length last week, the idea of a bifurcation or more of the global economic order and the impacts that could have. We'll see what those end up meaning for the long term, but interesting concepts, even if, implementation would be problematic and difficult as best, but then again, what isn't in life here? So thank you for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. We got to take that next break right now, but we, again, have those phone lines open, and we're taking a lot of comments over on the social media. So if you want to tune in, time in any of those ways, you're more than welcome to. Again, the number to call, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. A lot more comments we'll get to, and a whole lot more after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
El Paso freeway's looking pretty good. A couple of stalled vehicles to look out for. Loop 375 eastbound at Dyer. A stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. Also on Loop 375 westbound at Zaragoza, a stalled vehicle is blocking the right shoulder. Artcraft westbound at South Desert Boulevard, an injury accident there with medical crews. And an injury accident showing up Zaragoza just south of Socorro. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If April is showering your company with open job positions, check out Indeed. Their all-in-one hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates all in one place. Sponsor your first job today and get hiring by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
I am Eva Longoria, and I am so excited to share my new podcast with you. It's called Connections with me, Eva Longoria. What is the true meaning of connection? And how can true, authentic connection influence your life for the better? How should we connect with our partners, our kids, money, politics, food, jobs, news, spirituality? How can we connect better with ourselves? Listen to Connections with Eva Longoria on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, Mario Courtney Lopez here. We know life's moments are definitely better together.
And Smart Mouth mouthwash gives us the confidence to always be ready to make the most of these moments.
Whether in studio, on the red carpet, or around the house, having the confidence to get close is amazing.
Our lives are better together with Smart Mouth. Just 2 rinses a day means fresh breath for 24 hours.
Find it at your favorite drug, grocery, or supercenter store, or save 20% at smartmouth.com/radio.
Celebrate spring at Banana Republic Factory with 50 to 70% off everything. Discover vibrant dresses, modern suits, and more from $24.99. Find your nearest store or shop online only at Banana Republic Factory.
There's no part of our bodies that put in more work than our feet. And with all that work, your feet can start to ache. But luckily, there's relief for our overworked feet. Skechers Arch Fit footwear for men and women. Skechers teamed up with podiatrists to design a shoe that provides total foot and arch support for all-day comfort. They used 20 years of data and over 120,000 unweighted foot scans to create a podiatrist-certified insole that distributes support across the arch no matter what foot type you have. See all the styles of Arch Fit footwear for men and women at Skechers.com, a Skechers store near you, or wherever stylish shoes are sold.
Celebrate spring at Banana Republic Factory with 50 to 70% off everything. Discover vibrant dresses, modern suits, and more from $24.99. Find your nearest store or shop online only at Banana Republic Factory.
Why should you volunteer with Meals on Wheels?
I never thought that 5 minutes could make so much difference in the lives of 2 people, but it has.
Drop off a warm meal and get more than you expect. Volunteer at americaletsdolunch.org. Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. A lot of ways to interact with the show. Of course, we got those phone lines open right now. Number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And a lot more stuff we'll be getting into there. Comments coming in over on the social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and the Twitch. .tv page are the places to do that if you are so interested. Interesting comments coming in. John Browsleton with a note here that a foreigner in town tonight, and I'm sorry I can't make that one, but that students from the Socorro School District will be in the opening act. So that's exciting to talk about here, along with some other comments about other commentators here on the program here. But on a more serious note, John bringing up that one reason why Abbott is threatening to bus illegals to Washington, D.C. is to have the federal government sue Texas. This is an attempt to reverse the Supreme Court's decision against Arizona several years ago that decided that states can't have authority over immigration. So an interesting concept there, though. Again, that was already pretty quickly walked back because the idea of just doing it in mass, it was kind of an initial idea. Of course, Governor Abbott saying that no, it'd have to be voluntary on the part of the person here. So I'm not sure that way, in doing so, would end up being what would actually run afoul of it, because among other things, okay, talking locally anyway, the way that this system has worked in our region has been that once someone has been essentially processed through ICE and CBP, etc., that they may be then released or just kind of on the street, and then that's where the local nonprofit community dealing with these issues takes over and often gives them a bus ticket out of town. So once they have those kind of, again, travel authorization, if not exact documentation, I mean, it's pending court dates for the most part, they are then able to move about. So even if they were then putting those onto the charter and taking them to D.C., I'm not sure that would actually fall afoul of federal law. Again, depending on how you go about it, and there might even be a lawsuit just on the implication of such a thing. So we'll see if those efforts actually come to fruition or not. For now, again, what Governor Greg Abbott was talking about here in El Paso today during that conference that he was having, again, the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition spring meeting happening here, one of their 2 meetings that they have a year, talking about providing buses to simply move masses of people from areas that don't have the capacity to other areas and processing centers if need be. So that might be a little bit closer to it, but I know that, again, the whole DC initiative captured a lot of headlines, but we'll see what actually happens with that, if anything. But let's go back to those phone lines right now. Again, the number to call if you want to do so, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Do have Mario on the east side here with us right now. Mario, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey there. What's on your mind?
I want to talk about immigration.
Mhm.
So the problem that we have with immigration is that it's intentional by the Biden administration. This is intentional. We have people crossing over by, what is it, like 18,000 per day?
That's the potential.
Now,
That's the potential they're talking about with the removal of Title 42. I mean, it's still pretty high levels, but that's some of the projections we're looking at.
Right.
Mhm.
Then, of course, it's a monthly subsidy they're going to receive, a phone. So what they're going to be doing with the phone, literally calling their family members or friends, whatever country they come from, and we're going to have a real crisis later on in the months of this year. Now, another big issue that we have is drugs. I think your former caller right now said that we have a drug problems. We do. Fentanyl
Oh, yeah.
crossing our border, killing 100,000 people a year. I mean, this is insane. This is a crisis that Biden will not admit, and it's just going to get worse. It looks like we have an administration, once again, that is intentional to have open borders. And I'm not sure, and I think I heard that the former caller mentioned something about we don't have to have religion or get rid of religion. If I'm correct on that one, did I hear right?
I may have missed that reference here, but I guess the idea about how we go about it, I'm not sure which one you're referring to there exactly, but what was the point you wanted to make?
Well, the religion is the solution. I mean, everybody has their religion, their faith, but we can't remove God from our country. And that's probably what we're doing. We're really getting away from his laws and just living the way we want to. People do as they wish. And I think that we have to have some kind of moral law to guide our lives. And that's what we have. We have crime skyrocketing in major cities. Well, that on top of that, with also the DAs that are very immoral people. They don't want to prosecute crime. So I think that's, to me, that's an issue that we need to make sure that we have God in our schools, God in our government, God in our people's lives. That's my point of view.
I mean, I think that a basis of morality, wherever you find it, is important here. Though I guess I look at history and see the implications of saying, well, my interpretation is the one that needs to be paramount in the literal civil wars that have happened out there. But regardless, there is a need for it. Though I will also say that even if it's not happening officially, I will be perfectly honest. In high school, I, while not being a devout follower, went to my own, even Bible education classes held in my high school. It was an after-school club. So I think there's a difference between saying that it is not allowed to be practiced and saying that, well, not everyone has to practice the way you are doing it. So I do think that we have a lot of people going more into the idea of do as thou wilt than actually looking at what is important and what is right and what is correct to do in life. But to your first point there about the immigration issues and what the Biden administration is doing, whether there are subsidies or not, there is definitely, I mean, we saw it during the whole Haitian incident that was happening in the, Del Rio area, that yes, there was literally documented coordination happening because not all of those persons involved in that were coming straight from the island and the nation of Haiti, but rather some of them had been expatriated for years at that point, but we're all converging at that one location essentially. So that is a documented possibility that could come out of this. And yeah, that 18,000 a day across the entire border area, not even just our region, but the border overall. And what we were hearing from, of course, Sheriff Wiles about implications and concerns for our region, him not as concerned about it as he was saying. There's definitely a lot that was going to need to be addressed with that. And yeah, the coordination, I mean, it's already happened in other incidents, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that it's going to happen here.
Yes, sir, I agree. Yeah, we once again, like you said, it's a projection that we're seeing, and it's probably going to be really, really bad in the coming months.
Well, we'll see, and we'll see. Again, I'm still wondering if lawmakers can get off their butts and do something in the meantime, as opposed to just screaming that the policies that they have literally no hand in crafting at this point that they don't like. I mean, there are some bills that have been proposed that way, but I would really, really like to see them, along with this administration, do something.
Once again, I like to see Biden come to the border.
Oh, absolutely.
Any place in Texas, and he won't, and Kamala Harris won't either.
Yeah, again, open invitation here for this program, but we'll see if they take us up on it. Anyway, appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one.
Thank you, sir. You too. Bye.
All right. We got a couple more calls. Let's try to slip in one before we hit that bottom of the hour news break here. Again, the number to call 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Have a call on the line here right now. You're live with Talk El Paso. Who's this?
This is Andrew from the West Side.
Hey there, Andrew. What's on your mind?
Yes, reference border security and Title 42.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. With the sunset of Title 42, this is going to create a bigger crime problem. Not to mention, one has to wonder, with Dr. Fauci predicting a surge in COVID this coming fall, why would we want to get rid of Title 42?
Yeah, well, you've already seen. Okay, I'll be perfectly honest. I don't concern myself that much with what Fauci is doing. I'll take a recommendation with a grain of salt. But of course, it has come across my desk, the idea of this shifting to, I'm paraphrasing badly here, but this idea of personal responsibility of individual Americans is the best way to tackle this pandemic going forth, which was, I mean, again, it doesn't have much impact on me because that's kind of how I was already doing it. But further on, programmatically and policy-wise, I think that is essentially going to be the basis for, well, going against what you're suggesting here.
Well, yes, and also it's a prelude to Democrats insisting or mandating mail-in voting. Watch and see.
Potentially here. I mean, honestly, more Democrats I've seen have been opposed to the idea of the removal of all other restrictions except Title 42, because I guess the sense for most of them is that it's kind of a genie in the bottle moment. I mean, that bottle has been very leaky, may have been made of mesh at this point already, but the idea is once you remove restrictions and all of it, even if you say they're going to be back, you're increasing. It's kind of like a half-life of the population, probably worse, that are just going to completely ignore it going forward here. So, yeah, it's going to be it sounds like a have your cake and eat it too kind of moment if they're trying to do it both ways. But I wonder how well that's going to work out in Texas, of course, with all the numbers coming out and the analysis up to about 12% statewide of those mail-in ballots being rejected due to the new regulations under essentially the state laws coming out of SB 1 from the last set of legislative sessions.
Well, mark my words, this is a prelude to a tactic for election day. Now, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, just mention real quick, or ask a rhetorical question out there to people.
Okay.
Where are people getting this money to purchase marijuana in New Mexico? I mean, 1 gram of high-grade pot is about $10 an ounce. Somebody out there correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm reading on the internet, that's coming out of New Mexico.
Interesting point there. Yeah, I've had a thought to check the prices, but I have not wanted to go over and get involved with that just yet. But yeah, my understanding is that, okay, having known people previously tell me out of Colorado anyway, my kind of like in the back of my head idea of what does it cost to go into a store depending on the quality you're looking at here has been on the order of hundreds of dollars an ounce, I guess. But you're talking about a much smaller quantity, a gram there. So I'll really admit I'm not quite sure what the pricing has been starting to balance out as into the state of New Mexico. But yeah, the question was with that, $30 million of recreational, give or take, marijuana that was purchased across the state in that first weekend. Where was that money coming from, and how is that getting spent, and what isn't being spent otherwise? Or is this, are we seeing pot inflation essentially? I mean, it's a very reasonable and good question that I haven't seen much more investigation into. But, well, again, with now New Mexico talking about state-level stimulus checks, there might be, more infusion happening into that.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If I were a landlord, I'd be kind of questioning that, because hey, if you could afford to buy 2 grams of 2 ounces of marijuana, which that's the personal limit, but you're late on your rent, then I foresee a big problem right there.
Yeah, and the added item into the cleanup contracts for landlords about having to demusk a place. I'm sure that'll be getting factored into ongoing rental contracts probably.
Roger that. Anyway, I turn the mic over to you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for the point in the call. You have a good one.
Take care.
All right. I mean, we'll see what's going. I think I've got some planned travel up into New Mexico for other reasons. Don't come at me about this, but I might have to do some looking at it. But don't worry, I'm still going to be able to pass a test coming back into town. So again, don't at me on this issue, but that'll take us to our next break right now. Coming out of the break, we'll talk further about these issues and take more of your calls as well, because we got those phone lines open, 915-544-5876, 915-544 KTSM. More talk about what affects us here in the borderland out of this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
I'm Selena Madrid with your CBS 4 Morning News Update. Texas Governor Greg Abbott will be in El Paso today. He will deliver remarks at the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition spring meeting. The governor will discuss the state's ongoing border security efforts and how Texas is helping local law enforcement mitigate the influx of dangerous criminals, lethal drugs, and illegal contraband into communities due to the federal government's refusal to secure the border. Meanwhile, the El Paso Police Department is investigating a suspicious death that happened off of Montana in central El Paso. Now, this happened at an apartment building close to Laurel. And so far, police have only called this a suspicious death. Our crews at the scene did see the mobile command parked there. This is a developing story. As always, you can stay up to date with the latest news by signing up for our newsletter. It's easy and free to sign up. Just go to cbs4local.com, enter your email address, and from there, you'll start receiving our daily news updates.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Watch for a stalled vehicle on the 54 southbound gateway. A crash reported Loop 375 northbound at Bob Hope. Definitely some congestion in that area, slowing northbound traffic on the loop. An injury accident in the clearing stages, Artcraft Road westbound at South Desert Boulevard. And watch for an injury accident, Dyer Street, just north of Pershing Drive. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We've definitely had a windy day again, and tonight, well, we'll still have those winds into the early evening before they become a bit on the lighter side. Now, as far as our main wind event, that will take place on Tuesday, and as of right now, we now have a high wind warning from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. with west winds to 40 miles an hour, gusting to 60 miles an hour through the day.
This report is sponsored by General Dynamics Information Technology.
Are you ready for an unparalleled work experience where you see your impact every day? GDIT is hiring bilingual English-Spanish customer service representatives to deliver critical support to the government. $500 sign-on bonus available for select positions. Apply now at gdit.com/El Paso Jobs.
Hey, El Paso, this is Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. We've extended Ram truck months, and deals are even bigger and better with 0% interest, more for your trade, huge savings, and a huge selection of new and certified pre-owned vehicles with more arriving daily.
Buy now and get huge savings during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Save thousands in interest with 0 APR for 72 months on the all-new 2022 Jeep Wagoneer, full-size SUV with third-row seating. 2022 Ram trucks with 0 APR for 72 months. 0 down, 0 payments for 90 days. Upside down on your trade? We want it. Even if you owe thousands more than it's worth, we've partnered with even more aggressive lenders with great rates and terms for good credit, or even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying your truck is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso, El Paso Strong. Excludes factory rebate and dealer discount plus DTNL. 0 APRs, $13.89 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Staples Print and Marketing Services helps small businesses print big with wide format signs and banners. Right now, get $10 off custom printed signs, banners, and posters when you spend $50 or more. Offer ends 5/28. Visit staples.com/signage for details. This is your sign to print big at Staples. This report is sponsored by Staples Stores.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk is where you can find us there. Again, either of those names, most of those places, you can find us, see the broadcast that we do, the video on social media, but also leave your comments is one of the more useful parts of it. John Brazelton, Rudy Rivera, Maria Kalman, Carol Rank, Barbara Carrasco, RJ, and more tuning in, chiming in over there. I like the back and forth here because it makes me feel like I'm less in a room just talking into a mic here. Anyway, we also have those phone lines open here, not to get melancholy on you. The number to call there, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. A lot of calls coming in this way as well, so let's jump right back in with those. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
Today I was listening to Representative Escobar on a hearing on immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And in her remarks, she made a comment that we've tried walls, we tried Title 42, we tried Remain in Mexico policy, and they didn't work. So now we're finding out what works and what doesn't work. And I'm thinking, what universe is she living in? Then she asks the gentleman who was there testifying if the encounters, the 2.5 million, were actually encounters. And he said, well, the total 2.5 wasn't, because some of them were repeat offenders in a sense. And he said 820,000 of them were repeat offenders. So the actual total encounters were 1.7 million, as if that is supposed to make us feel better. And when President Trump was in there, last year he was there, the encounters were 458,000, and that's according to the Border Patrol stats. So our representative has a stat, and she's there trying to tell us that what President Trump did didn't work, and that we need to find policies that work. And I looked at the comments right after she made her remarks. With the exception of one individual, everybody did not believe a word she was saying. So people are waking up to the tragedy and the crisis that we have here at the border. And for her to still be out there stating that the wall didn't work, title policy didn't work, and Remain in Mexico didn't work, it's just a falsehood. And she's just set on ending Title 42.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get out there and vote, we need to remember what she's saying out there. She's trying to convince everybody at that hearing that things are really fine at the border, and you know, Trump's policy didn't work, but Biden's are working. It's just goes against the grain of sanity, you know, everything she was saying at that hearing.
Yeah, it's a pervasive kind of, okay, during the news update at the top of the hour, we had here from our national news partners talking about a continuing line coming out of the White House of that we've seen the most jobs added in history of the U.S. economy since the start of this term of office here. And that's kind of like looking at the graph of the height of a person at the bottom of a bungee jump. Oh, it's gone up the highest it's ever been, missing the part that happened right before that of them getting pushed off a high platform here, or in the case of the economy, a cliff. So, I mean, it's like kind of missing part of it. And in this case, the kind of reasoning you're talking about there feels more like well, there were definitely problems. And I'll be perfectly honest. I had issues with the way the policies were put under the Trump administration. They were certainly not perfect. But then to say, and so they weren't perfect, so therefore anything else we're doing differently has to be better and therefore should not be looked at and analyzed in its own right, as is kind of the sentiment I get coming out of that kind of line of reasoning, is just fallacious as hell. Like, to say that everything that happened before was bad, so therefore everything we're doing now is good, that just does not pass the smell test.
And you know, you're talking about jobs. We are still 3.5 million. I read $3.5 million, 5 million jobs short of what we were before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So all the jobs that are coming back, and that's it. They're coming back. They're not new jobs being created by this administration, because he's killed jobs. So he can't take credit for creating jobs if day one he started killing jobs. I don't understand the reason. And they get on TV like we're all idiots sitting here and believe what they're telling us. I'm hoping that the people of El Paso will open their eyes. And I was really pleased with that gentleman that called in last week on Friday that said he voted Democrat all his life, and he was realizing he had conservative values. And more people are saying that. So that gives me hope that people are waking up and understand that our representative is does not represent our values in Congress. I mean, here she just doesn't. She's far left, and she'll always be far left. And with the truth, the truth right in front of her eyes, she's still giving us this stuff. This I don't know if you want to call it misinformation or just plain falsehoods, and she knows it, but she still repeats them. So El Paso, we still have a chance here. Vote Armendariz and vote Escobar out. That's all I've got to say.
I mean, as much as I appreciate people evaluating their own political positions and find that very important, I really got to say, I think if we want to see a change in that, regardless of your standpoint on it, it's going to be engaging those, well, unengaged people out there, because you mentioned with the jobs issue that we still have, 3.5 million, maybe less jobs than it is, but yet we're still reaching that low unemployment. I mean, we're looking at levels of unemployment. Technically, the unemployment rate as calculated here being approaching pre-pandemic levels, but what the idea behind that then is that there's a whole lot of people who have just dropped out of the labor force, either some retirement. I think there's been a lot of push at the end, people's end of careers now saying, okay, screw it, I'm done with this, I'll just figure things out on my own and not be in the job anymore. But I think there's more people in the middle as well that have just said, I'm not doing a job anymore, I'll figure it out, but I'm not dealing with this stuff anymore. And so bringing them that back into the job force, well, that's kind of a similar problem we're looking at in terms of voter rates here in El Paso. We got a whole lot of people that maybe not have made a conscious decision not to vote. I mean, I almost have a begrudging amount of like, okay, I get where you're coming from, even if I think you're wrong kind of standpoint. We got a whole lot of people here who are just not in the voting force, to put it another way, that we got to get engaged if we're wanting to have, all this talk of change, all this talk of we got to do things differently. I don't see any of that happening without a significant more portion of people within the electorate and even potential electorate of El Paso, well, getting engaged. And so I really want to see more on the parties doing like get out the vote efforts, registering people to vote. It happens in small piecemeal, but I think it needs to be a focus if we really want to see that change.
Well, Escobar is the only one on the board or representative. I mean, you have Kelly, you have Cinema, you have Cuellar, you have Gonzalez, and they're all against lifting Title 42 with the exception of our representative. And then on jobs, a lot of small companies close their doors.
Yep.
So there's a lot of factors and everything. But it's just amazing that Escobar, you have the other Democrats seeing the realities of what's happening, and she doesn't see it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that in some of the interviews we've done with her, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it more before we get to election season. So, they're good points to bring up and ones that we need to keep talking about, absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call.
Absolutely. Thank you for the point of the call there. You have a good one.
You too. Bye.
All right. Let's try to get to at least one more or so before we hit that next break. Right now, we do have Jay on the west side here with us. Jay, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. Oh, and a great call with that lady that just called it a very informed team. To bounce off what she was saying, in a nutshell, this administration speaks to us as if we're absolute morons and that we cannot read the data, see the effectiveness, this, that, and the other. And their policies have harmed people financially, health-wise, and a lot of other things. But my call is actually about immigration, actually. So we have to wonder why, at least I wonder why. Why would you want that many people, regardless, coming in at one time? It's chaos. It's not controllable. It puts the country at risk financially. I don't even know if we can afford it. It could break us. But in my opinion, either this administration just loves immigrants. They just love them so much. I don't believe that government loves anybody. I just don't believe that. Okay, they're just people. What's the other thing that they could do? Well, just an outlandish theory that maybe someone should look into is when you have that many people crossing over, there's chaos. We're not going to know who's coming and going. If you wanted to take a country by force, you would embed, 5% of all those millions and millions of people that are here for the wrong reasons, that are military trained or blah, 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 strategically placed into this country, and voila, you've taken over this country from the inside. You could easily do that with 1 million people every 6 weeks entering the border all day long. Just something to put out there, because this administration has done nothing right by its people. In fact, it looks like they're attempting to harm this country at every level, from the local all the way to the federal. So if they were willing to do that, what else would they be willing to do? And I tell you, that many people, you cannot check those people in. There's going to be so many people come through that we don't know who they are. And if you want to take a country like ours, that's how you would do it. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your time.
No, sure thing. Thank you for the point in the call there. I mean, I already said it once earlier this show. That, I mean, I get your point there and the ease of what it is. I mean, I actually remember back in my competitive speech and debate days, fancy enough that I did that back in high school, that the idea of border security and the idea of there being able to people, essentially infiltration is what you're referring to there, being a possibility if there is an actual control on there. Two things come to mind. One, I'm very much on record of saying that we should know everyone crossing the border and the purpose and their qualifications as such doing that. And sure, if you want to have different asylum policies, different immigration policies, make it easier, harder, whatever, sure, we can have that debate. But the idea of this being the porosity is the phrase, or the idea of the holes in the border is one way I like to phrase it better, is just kind of unacceptable in my mind here. But again, I'll take it one step further, what we said even previous to this show, that I don't assume malfeasance when incompetence is as much of a justification. And I see a lot more on that, particularly in border policies. I've said it before as well, that I think that there were some probably behind closed doors that were thanking their lucky stars, that they could blame the Supreme Court for having to, quote unquote, force them to reinstate MPP, migrant protection protocols, the so-called Remain in Mexico policy, as opposed to having to come up with a new actual policy on their own. Though I think that if anyone was doing that, that reasoning is now out the window when it comes to, well, when we're looking at the whole Title 42 issue, which again, remains to be seen how much it'll actually progress here. There are some efforts happening at the, legislative level, though I think that legislators need to actually come up with some laws. I've heard smatterings of this coming out, that there's increasing pressure on Congress and the Senate in order to actually come up with laws doing with a revamp of border security and immigration. I'm not going to hold my breath on that one, but I would love to see that happen here. All right, we got to take that next break right now, but coming out of the break, we'll get to more of these calls on the line, squeeze in what we can, and end the program here. Tell you what we got coming up for future shows here, so stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Don't go anywhere.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Accident reported Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Edgemere. Watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder on the 54 Gateway southbound at Kenworthy. Loop 375 northbound at Bob Hope. An accident reported there. Definitely some congestion in the area, slowing traffic northbound on the Loop 375. Medical emergency at Reynolds, just south of Trowbridge. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
The new true crime podcast, White Eagle, investigates one of the largest cash heists in U.S. history. The robbery of over $7 million from an armored car warehouse. Was the ringleader a criminal mastermind, or was he a political pawn in a Cold War operation?
For some folks, they were boogeymen. They were, bandits hidden in the mountains and shadowy figures. For others, they were heroes.
Listen to White Eagle on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is a leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
Celebrate spring at Banana Republic Factory with 50 to 70% off everything. Discover vibrant dresses, modern suits, and more from $24.99. Find your nearest store or shop online only at Banana Republic Factory.
There's no part of our bodies that put in more work than our feet. And with all that work, your feet can start to ache. But luckily, there's relief for our overworked feet. Skechers Arch Fit footwear for men and women. Skechers teamed up with podiatrists to design a shoe that provides total foot and arch support for all-day comfort. They used 20 years of data and over 120,000 unweighted foot scans to create a podiatrist-certified insole that distributes support across the arch no matter what foot type you have. See all the styles of Arch Fit footwear for men and women at Skechers.com, a Skechers store near you, or wherever stylish shoes are sold.
Celebrate spring at Banana Republic Factory with 50 to 70% off everything. Discover vibrant dresses, modern suits, and more from $24.99. Find your nearest store or shop online only at Banana Republic Factory.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk, rounding the bend on the last bit of our show here today. I want to tell you about a couple more things we got working on for you this weekend and the weeks to come. Of course, border security issues come along with all of this is certainly in focus and will probably continue to be for the foreseeable future. But we've got some specific interviews, including other spots in the border that we usually talk about coming up here, but of course the implications it has for the borderland always in focus, plus some new features coming up on the show with more investigative work into El Paso issues. So stay tuned for more on that. We got that coming up for you this week for sure here, but let's get to those final calls here on the line here. Again, we got some new systems also coming into place. We're working on them on the back end, but for the meantime, if you got a message for us in between shows, after a show, just a burning comment or question you want to get to us and prefer doing it as a phone call, the way you can do that is with the pound 250 system. So the simple way that works is you dial pound 250 as a phone number on your cell phone. So both the pound sign and then 250. Call that. It'll ring. You'll be asked to say a keyword. Say Talk El Paso when prompted, and you can leave your own message like this.
This is Messiah Frankie. I just heard that James guy saying something about some Democratic something convention, and then they should also invite the Donito Todd doofus down here. Well, I want to remind all you El Pasoans, you are still owed over $500,000 for the last time that dork came out here and didn't pay the bill. Now, you want to come out here again, James? Then you better cough up some more money. Oh, unbelievable. What kind of moronic nonsense?
I mean, I think the question specifically from James last week, or I don't think it was James actually, but the call that brought up the idea of the Democratic convention coming in, state-level Democratic convention at 2024, was the idea of there being an opposing, Trump visit or something else like that. And I said, 2024, I'm not sure where it'll be because even if there hasn't been an announcement or not by that point, there will probably be a lot of campaigning going on the part of the former president, if only in the fundraising capacity. So we'll see what happens, but I mean, that whole cost association there, it's important to know, just in my mind, that that was actually the campaign, not the actual office of the president at that point in time. But anyway, let's get to that last call we got on the line here right now. We do have Jerry in Northwest here with us. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to congratulate Rudy. You're sounding more logical now, Rudy. Digesters for waste and stuff work. It can be produced into a methane, which is a natural gas. They do it at a lot of the waste disposal plants with the dumps, as you would call them.
Mm-hmm.
They drill them and they take out natural gas from the digestion of the old papers and waste material, bananas, whatever. So they do work. I have a question for you, Andrew.
Sure.
You heard about President Biden outlawing ghost guns.
Mm-hmm.
With only 5% of all murders by guns being done by a rifle or a long gun.
Right.
How many of those are even ghost guns? And what are they defining as a ghost gun? Is it also a gun that the serial number has been ground off or whatever? Because from what I understand, a ghost gun is just something that doesn't have a serial number.
Yeah, the untraceable nature of it is usually what's pinpointed there. I think was specifically the references he was making to them, what you're talking about there, was the idea of this no tracking of even manufacturers. So, I mean, the 3D printing revolution and the possibility implications it has for technology and or restrictions therein. I mean, firearms is one of the more obvious ones, but there's more to it than that could be seen down the road. I think that's what he's primarily referring to. I am not a crime data expert on this, but you are absolutely right that the vast majority of even firearms murders happen involving, pistols and what are often referred to as implements of further crime when it comes to that. I've literally seen a video of one Chicago suburb of a bunch of dudes coming in and ripping the front off of a gun store and running in, and there were some very expensive weapons that were on the shelves there, but they went for the glass cases and the handguns, because if you want implements of crime, that's what you want here. You want something concealable and on your person and not actually worried about like firepower, so to speak here. So you're right on that point. But in terms of actual ghost guns, 3D printed weapons, I am aware of a handful of incidents, just like period, like ever, that have happened here in this country, or at least in the last few years anyway. I don't want to say ever because that'll get me in trouble. But I mean, seriously, severe minority of this. And this is part of the problem I have whenever we're talking about national gun laws and such, is the lack of focus here that, sure, the major incidents and any incident involving this is a tragedy, make no mistake, particularly when it involves the schools, and those catch a lot of headlines. But that is, even in its own right, a minority, a vast minority of the incidents we're talking about across all of this. So the focus on that belies, to me, well, a lack of focus on the actual impacts that are happening to the majority of Americans that experience this. So you definitely got a point there. But tell you what, we're going to have to leave it there for today because we are out of time here for this program. I want to thank everyone who did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show. Y'all are really what helped make the show what it is. So we'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road. And have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow. And I'm headed to Gentleman's Republic, so see me the way I look tomorrow. Let me know what you think. Talk to y'all then. Stay safe out there. Bye.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
Accident reported Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Edgemere. Watch for a stalled vehicle blocking the left shoulder on the 54 Gateway southbound at Kenworthy. Loop 375 northbound at Bob Hope. An accident reported there. Definitely some congestion in the area, slowing traffic northbound on the Loop 375. Medical emergency at Reynolds, just south of Trowbridge. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Anyone can get long COVID, even Rob, age 22.
I got COVID in September of 2020, and a few weeks later, I started to have long-term problems. I used to run 5 to 6 miles a day. Now, when I walk up a flight of stairs, I'm gasping for air. It feels like my brain is clouded and I can't think straight.
Getting vaccinated against COVID-19 is the best way to prevent long COVID. Find vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Real estate tips with Brian. The best in El Paso when it comes to selling. Brian is an expert in real estate. Listen every Sunday from 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. on KTSM AM 690 for tips on buying or selling your home, info on what's going on in the market today, and much, much more. Real estate tips with Brian every Sunday morning at 7:30 on KTSM AM 690.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Russia is being accused of using chemical weapons on Ukrainian forces and civilians. A National Guard of Ukraine unit claims chemicals were dropped by an unmanned aerial vehicle in Mariupol. The unit said the unknown chemicals caused respiratory failure. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby is noting the Russian invasion isn't going according to plan.
I don't think Mr. Putin needs many signs that it hasn't been going well for him. Here we are, day 46. And again, he failed to achieve so many of his geographic and strategic objectives.
He said the U.S. will do whatever it can to document and investigate potential war crimes being committed by Russian forces in Ukraine. Indoor mask mandates are back in Philadelphia. It becomes the first major U.S. city to reinstate mask mandates. The move comes as the number of coronavirus cases rose sharply in recent days, mostly due to the spread of